You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
And welcome to this edition of Critical Mass Radio Show. I am your host, Richard Franzi, and oh, do we have a great show planned for you in this segment. This is podcast number 1011. As an internationally renowned, bilingual, and bicultural speaker and author, Dr. Betty Uribe credits value-based leadership as her secret to success. And in her latest book, #Values, she guides readers into the secrets of top-level performance and the call for better leadership. Dr. Betty joins us on Critical Mass Radio Show. I've invited her here to discuss more how we can apply value-based leadership skills within your firms. Betty, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rick. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to having you here for some time. Let's go back. The book, I'm holding up the book. For those of you that are watching the live stream on Facebook, you can see a copy of the book. It's available. We'll talk about how you can get your own copy, all the usual places, but we'll cover that a little bit later in the interview. But maybe we could start by just, what was it like when you first, I heard you speak Friday at the Women's Summit, talking about coming to the United States, not understanding and speaking the language. So take our audience back to what it was like for you at that time. I think you were 14?
I was 12.
12.
Yes, okay. I was 12 years old, and all of a sudden, my mother calls us into the room, my three brothers and I, and says, I'm not going to stay here any longer. I'm leaving, but I'm leaving the country. And
not just leaving your father.
Not just leaving my father, leaving the country.
Wow.
And you can stay here, you could go with me, and I'm going to America. And she would no longer tolerate his infidelity and his alcoholism. And she wanted to just get the heck away.
Sure. Pretty drastic.
You know, it was drastic because she was, for all intents and purposes, she was doing very well. I mean, my father was a millionaire. We had a beautiful home. We had maids. We had all kinds of different things. And so coming to America from being a wealthy girl to becoming a very poor girl at the age of 12.
Overnight.
Just literally in an airplane ride, I became poor at the age of 12. So that was interesting. And leaving my dad, I was daddy's little girl.
Sure. Yeah, two brothers and you.
And my brothers, my three brothers and I.
Oh, three brothers, sorry.
And leaving my family, my roots, my family, my friends. I was very popular in school, did really well, and then coming to a place where I didn't know the language or the culture or what to expect, and in learning everything from the ground up and starting literally from zero. So it was difficult.
Doing chores and manual labor just to make ends meet. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't even know how to make my bed. I had to learn. I learned. I took a humility pill on the way here, and I had to clean houses, and I ended up becoming literally the maid of my house at the age of 12. I had to. My family had to endure many burnt meals and doing the dishes and taking care of everything, and then studying at night when everybody was sleeping so that I could get my studies done.
Right.
That was a big priority for me.
That's an inspiring way to start this interview, to realize where you had to reset and come from in this culture, in this country, in this language.
Yes.
And now we're sitting here today with your book, which is a part of your PhD dissertation. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And that is
Thank you, Rick.
awesome. Right?
Thank you very much.
I love that story. Love you. Love what you've been able to do, and
Thank
love
you
your
so
focus.
much.
So let's talk a little bit about the book. Okay.
Okay.
Let's start with the inspiration for. I know the foundation of this was your PhD dissertation, correct?
Yes, it was my dissertation, absolutely.
Okay. But you chose to focus and research and talk to successful leaders in a bunch of different areas, which you can tell us about, specifically in the area of values. Why that area?
I think if you take me back to that decision that I got to make at the age of 12, leaving a life of luxury to come to a different life. And that was, I think, my very first values-based decision I made in my life, was to come for principle, to come for values. My mother wanted to live a life of peace, and she wanted to give us a different future. How many times in our life do we find people that will marry or will stay with someone and will do that because they're wealthy? Quite frankly, my mother chose not to do that. She chose to come for what she called a better life.
Wow.
And it was a life
wow,
of
that's
values.
a redefinition of better life, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it was a life of peace where we got to work to get to where we wanted to get instead of having it handed to us in a silver platter.
Wow.
So that was the genesis, I think. And I've always talked, it's funny because employees from different companies from the last 20 years just did a reunion for me, and they came back and they said, you've always talked about values.
Wow.
20 years ago, 25 years ago, when you led us, you've always centered yourself around values and living a life of value. So I think it's just always been in the fiber of my life, in my family, and my culture, because that's what my mother embedded in us. And then also in 2007, when the economy started going down, and this is around the time when I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate.
You already had your MBA in finance.
I had
right?
my MBA in finance and strategy from Pepperdine University.
Yay!
Yes. Yay, Pepperdine.
Exactly.
And then I decided 10 years later to go back to school, and I chose to study values because as the companies started going down, as the economy started going down, we saw the headlines in the newspapers were headlines of leaders who were role models, who all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, one decision, and they were down.
Yes.
And they started coming down, coming down, coming down. Companies would be bringing whole economies down. Individuals from different backgrounds. You had people from clergy, you had people from government, from business, from sports, from education, all over. And so I wanted to study and find out, okay, so these were the role models of yesterday. There have to be other role models. And how is it that they're able to maintain their position and their values, permeate those values through their organization, and create sustainable high results?
Right, the marriage of the two. Early in the book, you talk about how people don't live their values, and then things like that show up. They espouse one thing, but their inner thoughts are different than their outer actions until there's a catalyst or an event where you get to see behind the curtain.
Yes.
You talked about it. It can be business, it can be sports, it can be Hollywood, it can be politics. It's amazing. And once you see the real them, they can never get back it's hard for them to get back what
It's
they
very
thought they had.
difficult. You know, Stephen Covey talks a lot about trust, building trust.
Yes.
And I had a long conversation with Stephen Covey when he decided to endorse my book, and we were talking about building trust. He has this book, The Speed of Trust, and it's one of my favorite books. And building trust is like making deposits into the bank, right? You're going to build trust. And then if you make enough deposits, then you can withdraw. But building trust begins with having a core value system. You can't build trust if you are not congruent, meaning if your actions are not aligned with what you say your values are.
Right. And people pick that up in a leader, right?
Yes.
I don't think leaders appreciate always, especially, so my audience are CEOs, leaders of lower middle market companies. And many of them don't appreciate how sampled they are by the workforce. People watching them for what their actions tell them about that person.
I'll tell you something. I always say, we sneeze, they feel a hurricane. And I always say that we as leaders, we are in a magnifying glass. We walk in the room and people have us in a magnifying glass. They're going to watch our actions rather than our conversation. Let's face it, talk is cheap. And I said that to the 1,000 women on Friday.
Right.
But it's really our actions that are going to show people what our values truly are. And if you really want to know what your values are, look at your calendar.
Right.
That's going to tell you exactly what your values truly are. Whatever you spend your time on, that's going to be...
So in the book, you draw the link between your priorities and your values.
Yes.
And you also talk about how when people under stress show you a side of them, you quoted someone. Take a front row and observe.
I did. Andy, my coach from a long time ago, he said, hey, you watch people under stress and pay attention to yourself, right? So a great leader is one that is able to look at themselves acting out however it is that they're going to be acting out.
Okay.
It's not just acting it, but really observing yourself and saying, wait a minute, how am I acting right now? And so in the moment of stress, of high stress, there's an urgency in the organization, or there's an urgency walking out of the house in the morning and your child calls you and says, Daddy, I need you. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? That's what's going to tell your child what's most important.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
Likewise, the same thing for your employees. If you tell your employees, you're the most important thing and you are the most valuable asset in this company and all of this,
right.
and you go off and do everything for your customers, but you don't take care of your employees, what are you telling your employees?
Right.
Your actions are showing something completely different.
And isn't that worse? That is worse, to say one thing and do another when they know there's not a congruency there.
Absolutely, because people don't know where they stand. They don't know what to expect from you. So what happens is, if they don't know what to expect from you, there's no consistency, there's no congruency, they're going to make up their own answers
right.
to their own questions. And 9 times out of 10, those answers are going to be negative.
Exactly. Well, and you talked about Stephen Covey Jr. and his book, and he talks about the trust tax, which is how organizations that are low trust actually take longer to make decisions because people can't accept what is said at face value.
Exactly.
They spend all this energy figuring it out.
Yeah, well, the employees will say, now, I wonder what he was coming from or where she was coming from. I wonder what they're trying to do.
Yes.
What's the motive behind this? And if you think about people getting on the phone and calling each other, hey, did you hear this? Or did you see this memo that just came out? What do you think that was about?
My goodness.
What are they up to? Oh, my gosh, I wonder if they're going to be making a change. Oh, no. Maybe we have to worry about our job, and all of these things that begin to get exploited in people's minds
yes.
when something as simple as, let me tell you where I'm coming from.
Right.
This is where we are. And then for people to be able to say, how wonderful would it be like for people to just say, I believe him.
Right.
He
told me
her.
that. She told me that.
So I believe it.
And that's good enough for me.
That's good
I'm
enough for me.
I'm going to get back to work now.
Yeah. So
wow.
the speed
yes.
of decisions, the speed of implementation, things happen a lot quicker when there is a high level of trust.
Right. We're talking with Dr. Betty Uribe. We're talking about her book, and I'll hold it up for those on the live stream for Facebook. It's #values. It's work that she did at Pepperdine for her dissertation, but this is a good read, ladies and gentlemen. That's why she's been recognized by so many publications and institutions for the impact this book is having on global business. We're going to talk about that. Can we talk about that when we come back?
Absolutely.
All right. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back with Dr. Betty Uribe after this brief word from me.
If you are an Orange County business executive, this message is for you. Do you ever feel isolated with no place to turn for advice or feedback? Who holds you accountable to your commitments in your company? Where do you find the right resources to help you and your company grow? If you have these questions, then Critical Mass for Business might be the answer for you. Critical Mass for Business is committed to helping you make better decisions. These are groups of peers running businesses just like you, providing a great sounding board to test ideas and concepts, review plans and goals, and present issues and opportunities for discussion. The result is improved strategy, accountability, people, and execution skills. If you are interested in learning more, go to www.criticalmassforbusiness.com and learn more about our executive peer group.
Exciting times here on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast, talking with Dr. Betty Uribe. Before we get back to that conversation, I just want to say a great way to stay informed about our guests, like Dr. Betty, is to sign up for our weekly newsletter. Simply go to my company's website, criticalmass4business.com. At the bottom of any page is a join our mailing list box. Simply enter your email address, hit subscribe, and like magic, you'll start receiving our weekly newsletter. We don't do anything else with your information but subscribe you for our newsletter, which will tell you about our great guests and sometimes special insights from me. So when we were at break, we were talking about the latest.
Yes.
So tell us about what Inc. just announced.
It was very exciting because it was a total surprise.
Right.
I wake up this morning and I'm reading through my LinkedIn, and there was someone by the name of Maria, and she was also part of this Inc. magazine, I guess, published a list of the top 60 business and leadership books written by women. And my book was part of the list, and it was just such a quite big honor, big surprise, and it was just a wonderful day to wake up to.
Right, and that's not the only recognition you've received for the work that you've done with this book. If we started the list, it might take up too much. It might take up the entire block. So just let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give you Betty's website here a little bit later in the interview.
Absolutely.
And you can see the reception that you've received to this, and the back jacket, the people that have commented on the quality of this book. Why do you think there's been such a positive reception to this idea about values being the secret to top-level performance in business and in life?
I think our world on a global scale, if we take a look at what's going on in the world and then bring it down to our own backyard in the United States, what's happening on a global level, we've seen a lot of leaders that have faltered. And we've seen the need for congruency in when people speak, that their values be backing up what they speak. And if we see different companies and on a even smaller scale, the idea of bringing back trust in the media, in organizations, in leaders, in even the Pope, when he came to visit, he talked about the family values and going back to the family values, the core values. And so and we see it on television, where you see some of the shows that are taking us back to the old times. Mm-hmm. The songs that we play on the radio are taking us back to the old times, and it's almost feels like people just want to go back to the times when values meant something, when being a man or a woman of honor meant something.
So you profile 18 leaders from business, industry, military, a bunch of different areas.
Yes.
And I believe in the power of peer learning. So to read your book and to see it's based on actual people and conversations, interviews that you've had with these successful people and understanding their value based, how did you find them, and then how did you get them to say yes to being interviewed for you and possibly being your book?
It was really interesting because there was a criteria that I had, and there were 3 different pods. It was military leaders,
yes.
And I ended up with people, generals. They had to be military generals because I wanted to get to the very top. And from the White House, the Pentagon, and from every area of military. It was business leaders, from C-level executives in business or business leaders, and then C-level executives in finance. And I chose those 3 pods because when a country is being restored or a city is being restored, those are the 3 pillars that it takes to restore a country, that it takes to restore a city, that it takes to restore a community. To answer your question, how I got to them,
yes.
Basically word of mouth. People were known, they had to be known as values-based leaders whose actions aligned with their values, who made decisions based on their values, and who made it a priority to make a difference in others. Mm-hmm. That was the criteria. So I started asking people, and I got into the White House and into the Pentagon through a referral of a client.
Oh, my goodness.
A client said, hey, have you thought about the military? There's so much to learn from the military.
Right.
And I just know this general, and it was General Mick Kicklighter. He was a 4-star general in the U.S. Army, in charge of the U.S. Army from the west of the United States to the east of China during the Saddam Hussein days. Huge lessons and a lot of secrets that he had never told anybody are in my book. And so once I interviewed one person, then of course, birds of a feather fly together.
Right.
And so I would ask, do you know anybody that has similar values to you, and who would you recommend? And then I would have to check them out. So for some of the business leaders, like Bob Carr, for example, from Heartland Payment Systems, he's now sold it and started a new company. I checked out his employees, many levels down from him, and I checked out through his peer group, and he checked out to be a true values-based leader.
Wow.
And so that's how he landed in my book. So likewise, a lot of research went into each of the 19 leaders that I have in the book.
Right. It's awesome to read about them and see the diversity that you have. And for those of you, many who listen to the Critical Mass Radio Show and podcast, you also like to take self-assessments. And early in the book, there's an opportunity to do just that.
Yes. I have the Rokish value system in the book, and there are two different types of values that you could test yourself for: terminal values and instrumental values. Terminal values are those values that you will have at your deathbed, at the end of your life. And then the instrumental values are the values that you utilize throughout your life and throughout your leadership journey. So you can actually take the test. I have the actual test in there.
Yes, and then what's great, and I didn't realize it, and so maybe I shouldn't say this, but there's great content that follows up about some common ways that people responded.
Yes.
Value-based leaders. So
yes.
I don't want to give away too much, because it was really great for me to take it not knowing that.
Oh, wonderful.
And then,
yes.
and then you go, oh, look how do I
measure these great leaders?
Right. And
absolutely.
what can I learn?
And what can I learn from them?
Based on, because the earlier conversation about your values are based on where you're focused and your priorities are.
Yes.
So that brings it all right together in the early part of the book.
Absolutely.
So this isn't only a learning tool, it's a tool that you can learn about yourself from.
Yes,
not
absolutely.
Just others.
From a personal life and from a business life.
Well, you're the same person.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
At home,
yes.
at work.
At least you should be.
Well, let's hope.
Right?
If you're a value-centered person,
yes.
it would be incongruent, I think, to have a set of values at work and at home.
That is correct.
I mean, with minor adjustments,
yeah.
right? Okay. So what words of advice do you have for a CEO or business owner out there who says, I've got a book that I want to write, and I don't know that I'm going to go and get a PhD and get a dissertation as the foundation, but what words of inspiration might you have for someone else who wants to write a book? What could you tell them about the successful now having written the book?
It's not as difficult as it seems to be. And if anyone has an idea and has an opportunity to make an impact, what a better way to make an impact than to put it down and make it accessible to other people? A lot of times we carry ideas with us, or we carry something that we can make a difference for someone, and maybe we share it with one person, and that's wonderful. Or maybe we share it with a center of influence, and that's also wonderful, because maybe they will take it out to their core group. When you write a book, there are two things that I think for myself. One, it's a wonderful opportunity to make an impact. Yesterday, I spoke to some girls in a school in San Bernardino at a university, and I brought and donated some books. And it was wonderful because they get to know you through your book. You get to impart the wisdom, and then when they're done with it, they can pass it on to somebody else. And it's your words that are being passed on.
Right.
It's not their interpretation of your words. It literally is your words. So what better way to do that? And then, hopefully I can get it translated and send it out to different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's simple. It's not easy.
Right.
But it's simple. For someone who's brand new writing, now I did a lot of writing in my doctorate and in my master's and all of that, but somebody who's brand new writing, there are people who specialize in writing and in helping you ghostwrite.
Yes.
I actually had someone, Beth Lauding, and she actually supported me in getting the book getting the dissertation volumes, which were volumes of research, in the format of a book.
Not 270 or whatever your book.
Yeah, when you're managing a bank, when you're leading a bank, it's really hard
job
to do
there.
both.
Right.
So get some help, and it's okay. You don't need to do it all on your own.
And give them credit.
And absolutely,
which I love
give
about
them
you.
credit.
You just were willing to stand on that, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
We only have a few minutes left. The engineer's telling me we're coming up against it, but I didn't want to leave this without asking you to talk about your commitment to creating endowments and for people to go to school on the 7 continents.
Thank you for that. Absolutely, and thank you for asking. My goal is to give 100 scholarships to underserved kids in each continent by the time I am 80 years old. I started in Kenya 3 years ago, and that was before the book ever came out. And through the Unstoppable Foundation, if you go into my website, you'll see the Unstoppable Foundation. You can click there and you can make a direct donation, and it'll count for my goal. Here in Southern California, Bob Carr donated $1 million the day the book came out.
Oh, my God.
And I worked with President Strupa from Chapman University to greatly reduce the tuition costs so that we could make those $1 million count for 54 underserved kids in Orange County, right here in Southern California.
Charity starts
will
at
be
home.
Going to school.
Wow.
Yes.
What an impact.
It's wonderful. I'm very, very humbled. But we don't do it alone. It takes a village.
It does, doesn't it?
And if you wanted to know about that, too, you could go into my website, and there is Bob Carr's Foundation. You just click on that, and you donate, and it goes to kids right here in the United States. So very exciting.
So how does someone get to your website, Betty?
You just go to www.drbettyuribe.com.
And we're going to spell that now.
BettyUribe.
And doctor is DR, right?
DR.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, Google it, go to her website. It's a beautiful website.
Thank you.
You really have set it up very well. There's a lot of great additional information that complements the book. And if people want to buy the book, is that the best place to go to your website?
Yes, they can go to the website, and they can go to Barnes & Noble. They can go to Amazon. I've got all of the clicks right there in the website, so it's really simple.
Yes, and a good read. I highly recommend it. If you're a leader of people, regardless of the number of people, or you aspire to be a leader of people, even if you're a leader of one yourself, this is a good place to start. I really think this is a needed message that hopefully will influence the next generation of leaders to be true to themselves.
Absolutely, for generations to come.
Amen. All right. Thank you for being a friend of the program.
Thank you so much, Rick. I absolutely love your program. I love what you do for leaders in the community.
Thank you.
You have made a difference for my leaders at California Bank and Trust and for my team as well. So whatever you do, continue to do it, because I am a big champion of your work.
You're too kind.
You know, I've known a lot of wonderful leaders, but people like you are very hard to find. Selfless, brilliant, and you get the best out of people, and I just love what you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, that was unexpected, but much appreciated. Thank you, Dr. Betty. All right, our engineer for today's show is none other than the station owner, Mr. Paul Roberts. We're lucky to have him in the chair today, as well as our producers are Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, and Haley Stern. If you'd like to learn more about Critical Mass Radio Show or the peer groups that I lead, visit my website, Critical Mass for Business. And until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.
You have been listening to Critical Mass Radio Show Business Talk Show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Richard Franzi is a highly sought-after keynote speaker on topics of interest to CEOs of middle firms across North America. Richard's talks include Killing Cats Leads to Rats, a fascinating look at how unintended consequences of CEOs' decisions impact their firm's performance. Your Gray Matter Matters, which explores how a CEO's mindset can differentiate a middle market firm and define its culture. Richard delivers talks to a variety of audiences, ranging from executive team retreats to keynotes in front of hundreds of CEOs. To learn more about his talks, visit criticalmassforbusiness.com and select the contact page or call 949-887-4104.
He used to pester me for a walk. Now, it's the other way around. Hoax is physicians perform more orthopedic procedures than any other hospital in Orange County. Our orthopedic program, in fact, ranks among the top 5 in the entire country. So whatever it is you live for, you can get